No, bitch! No! I'm not sure if you know, but here on this channel, we have a wee show called Something Scary. My sister Sapphire tells you all about the spookies and all about the dookies, and bless her for it. Lucky for you, you're probably a normal human who can go forth and lead a normal life after watching the show, but unfortunately, I'm obsessed. So I'm here to, well, actually, Sapphire's episode about the black-eyed children. This haunts me. Sapphire does a dope job of explaining this phenomenon, but allow me to elaborate. Black-eyed children were first brought into the paranormal lexicon in the late 90s by a journalist named Brian Bethel. The very abbreviated story goes like this. Brian approaches his car alone at night. He's parked in a strip mall just under the marquee of a movie theater. Brian got into his car ready to leave for home when he hears a knock on his window. Two young boys ages 10 to 14 stood quietly. Brian couldn't understand why, as a grown man, these two children incited tremendous fear in him. Brian mentions that he can sense that something is wrong, but he understands that it's too late. This is a common experience with black-eyed children, the feeling of will paralysis, like someone or something has control over you. And I mean will like free will, not like Will Smith paralysis. That sounds dope. I would love that. Anyway, Brian sees these two young boys and asks what they need. The older kid says, "Open your door," but Brian refused. The kid looked baffled that his request was denied. They become more firm in their cadence, saying that they must get home, even going as far as reminding Brian that they're just little boys, and what's the worst that could happen? Nope! If a little kid has to remind you that they're a little kid, chances are that ain't a little kid. Like, have you ever met a little kid that wasn't like, I'm grown? Like, no. Okay, to take a step back for a second, these are two very young boys alone at night approaching a stranger for a ride. They have no fear in their voice or inflection at all. They mention they need to get home, but no explanation as to why they're alone. Sources say, creepy. When Brian asked why they were alone, they said they were seeing a movie, but unfortunately for them, that was a terrible lie. The only movie playing at the theater at that time had started an hour ago. They were neither going in nor coming out of any movie. Liars! Pants is on fires? Okay. His correct instinct is to pull away, but suddenly he catches his hand moving towards the car lock, involuntarily. Brian has the wherewithal to shake himself out of it, and this is when he notices the boys' eyes. They are all black. In a panic and against what literally every person tells you to do upon seeing young children in need, he drives away. That's my kind of man. As soon as he peels away, he looks into the rearview mirror to find no trace of the boys. They vanished. Many people believe that this is the birth of creepypasta, but it's not. This is a story from a journalist, a man who has no stake in the paranormal community and frankly has no desire of sharing this story. Creepypasta is, I'm sorry, fake. Fake stories created to ruin your sleep schedule. Hashtag no sleep. Brian Bethel is a respected journalist whose job is to report the truth, and to him, this was the truth. This certainly isn't the first story in existence about the phenomenon of black-eyed children, but it's the first to go viral because it's the first since the internet. Wow, the internet didn't always exist. Did you know that? Spooky. Since Brian's retelling, myriad stories have popped up on the subject, and they all have a few connecting points. They're kids, and usually they come in pairs. This is basic psychology. Whatever these things are, they're aware that the least threatening shape to take is that of a child. If an adult finds a child in need or in crisis, it's very difficult to turn that kid away. Which brings us to the point, they need your permission to come inside. They will always ask, and you need to comply. Sure, they get creative and change their story depending on the environment, but they need that yes. Quick aside, what I find so interesting about these black-eyed children is how slightly off they always seem to be. Like in Brian's story, why mention you're going to see a movie that started over an hour ago? One of my favorite stories is from a woman who had an experience with the black-eyed children coming to her home. They knocked on the door in the middle of the night and asked to use the telegraph. And this was not in the 1890s or 1920s. It was like 2015. It's like in Men in Black when the cockroach alien invades that dude's body and his wife is like, Edgar, your skin is hanging off your bones. Like, I can see you're going for human, but you didn't quite stick the landing. They compel you. You feel not forced, but heavily encouraged to follow their orders. They say open the door, and you're thinking, oh, hell no. But then all of a sudden, you find your hand inches away from the doorknob, and you're like, what happened? Usually people snap out of it. They see what they're doing, and they redemand control of their body. But what about when they don't catch it in time? I'll get to that later. Moving on. Obviously, they have black eyes. But that's not all. They're dressed in nondescript clothing and often inappropriately for the environment. I'm not talking like booty shorts at a funeral, but like they won't have coats in the middle of winter, or it'll be raining, but they'll appear dry and shoeless for some reason. Their eyes too, man. They're not just black, they're voids. It's like a deepness. Not the color black, but rather the absence of color, that like absence of anything at all. What happens if you let them in? Well, first of all, don't. Listen, call me crazy, but if anyone at all, kid, adult, Super Saiyan, knocks on my door and asks to come in, oh honey, I'll help you from a distance. I've done this show for too long to trust a single stranger, no matter what size. But what if you're not an asshole like I am? What if you're a mom yourself and two freezing children are standing at your doorstep in the middle of a blizzard?
Can we come in?
What are you gonna do? Well, you let them in, of course, because that's what they're banking on. They're kids. The weather is terrible. When there's extreme weather, you allow for extreme circumstances. It's the purge, y'all. Be safe. She felt fear just like the rest of them, but felt, wait for it, compelled to let them in. She led the kids into her living room to use the house phone. It was then she realized their eyes were black. She and her husband stared at them in horror, and at that moment, his nose started to bleed. All of the lights in the house went out, and with that, the kids said in unison, which is very creepy, our parents are here. By the way, they never used the phone to call their parents. That's a small oversight. The woman watched as the kids approached a black car. A man in a suit stepped out, looked into the window, then abruptly left. After this occurrence, the woman's husband was diagnosed with skin cancer, and she suffered from chronic nosebleeds. Neither of these conditions were present before the encounter. Listen, I know blaming cancer on spooky kids is intense, and it is. But to this woman, this is totally real. And she 100% attributes her illness and her husband's illness with their encounter with the black-eyed children. Theories. So a fun tidbit you may be scratching your head about is the man in the suit who picked the kids up in that last story. Well, one theory surrounding the black-eyed children is that they're supernatural correspondents whose job is to infiltrate the human realm. Bum, bum, bum. But what's the point? I don't know. Some theories say they're conduits of demons coming to spread mischief, but we all know how I feel about the idea of demons. So I don't know about that. I do see some truth in the idea that they are creatures of mischief. Like any supernatural succubus, they feed off the energy of those who they inflict pain upon. But Rachel, how does that explain the man in the suit? Okay, chill out, I got you. So, you've heard of Men in Black, right? The iconic movie I referenced just a few minutes ago? Well, guess what? That idea didn't originate with Will Smith, unfortunately. Men in Black, who I will certainly do a Dark Five about, are agents of the supernatural. They keep tabs on the cryptids and beings and creatures and spirits that inhabit our world. They're also known to work for the government as a type of supernatural guardian. For instance, there are stories of people being visited by the Men in Black after they report a UFO sighting. The job of the Men in Black is to silence these people, to protect the secrets not only of this world, but of every world. So, could the man from this woman's story be a man in black coming to collect a couple of unruly spirits? Sure, why not? What do you guys think? Do you think that the man from this woman's story was a man in black, or do you think that I am stretching? I'm reaching for it, I'm reaching for it. That's the thing about this stuff. You can either choose to believe the people who are telling their story or not. When you hear these people retelling their experiences, you can hear the fear. You can hear that they believe that this happened to them. So I choose to believe, because a little suspension of disbelief could just save your life. Now, I'm not saying turn away a child begging for your help, but maybe, if that does happen to you, you'll know to check the eyes first. Thank you for watching. as always, if you want me to cover any other stories that you've seen on Something Scary, let me know in the comments. I would love to do this. This was really fun for me. And Sapphire said she doesn't mind. I haven't asked, but I think she doesn't mind. And guess what? We have a Snarled store. If you go to store.snarled.com, you get a t-shirt, you get a pop socket,